Most people don't know what a dead man's trigger is. And even fewer need one.
Commander, is that? Yes. We're going?
A dead man's trigger is a safety valve. For reasons of security, a person prepares a recourse of such severe action that if harmed, they will release a cache of damaging evidence against those enemies. Given his situation, Dr. Stephen Greer is one of those rare men. Why would he need one? He's not the first person to push the disclosure of a corrupt military-industrial agenda.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
In his final public speech, a farewell address, no less, in a time when every second on TV was priceless, United States President Dwight D. Eisenhower decided not to brag about his victory in the Korean War. Instead, he cashed in all his chips to warn this nation of a hidden enemy.
We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications.
When I was with Lawrence Rockefeller at his ranch in 1993, he turned to me and he said, "The implications of this are so vast and so profound that no aspect of life on Earth will be unchanged by its disclosure." I said, "Yes, Lawrence, that's why it's been kept secret. It's not because it's trivial, it's because the implications are so profound." So there have been attempts to bring this information out for over 60 years. And here we sit in 2012 with the world still burning oil and gas and coal, when we have had technologies, sciences, and all the information we need to have had a completely new civilization.
What Eisenhower warned us about over 60 years ago, according to Steve Greer, has long become truth in Washington, D.C.
The most music, Q107, driving home with the Spearman. Hello, what are people all over D.C. saying about all this money we are giving?
And why is Washington, D.C. booming? Because the rest of the country is sending their money here.
I know, isn't it beautiful through the trees?
My name is Ted Loader. I've been working with CSETI program and Dr. Greer for 15 years.
Cool, huh?
Wow.
Yeah.
One always wonders if the public really knew what was going on with government covert programs and how much money has been put into it, you know, hundreds of billions of dollars. I think the public would be a little annoyed.
Thomas Jefferson believed all men have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The government they formed would serve to secure those rights. But when corporations or other specialized groups of men become more powerful than those who govern, our security is at stake.
Thomas Jefferson wrote about unchecked power of the corporation being a threat to the democracy and the banks.
You see, the U.S. Federal Reserve Bank issues every dollar bill, yet it is not run by the U.S. government or any elected official. It is owned by a private banking cartel.
But here I find the chairman of the Federal Reserve, who's in charge of the dollar, in charge of the money, in charge of what the money supply is going to be. The middle class is being wiped out, and nobody's understanding that it has to do with the value of money. Prices are going up. So how are you able to defend this policy of deliberate depreciation of our money?
A lot of it depends on what happens to the price of oil.
The four horsemen, or families of banking who own and run the Federal Reserve, also run the four largest oil companies. Oil is also used to make and run machinery and current mechanical technology. Of course, there's one industry that needs these more than anyone else: the military-industrial complex.
You begin to get into this very scary scenario that has to do with the human condition of the proclivity to accumulate vast amounts of power around a handful of people.
All right, sit down and shut up.
And right now, these misanthropic sociopaths are running the planet into the ground.
When Congress or whatever else, or budget directors say, well, we've lost $100 billion in black program, what does the public do? What can the public do? We can complain to our congressmen, but our congressmen can't get any information.
With lobbyists, interest groups, campaign funding, the economic powers that be have learned to control the political sphere.
These politicians become almost like placeholders. And they don't realize that until they get into the White House or into the Senate Intelligence Committee. It doesn't matter who the president is. They're going to do what they want to do.
And that which is good for them isn't always good for everybody else. From 1945 to 1998, 2,053 nuclear bombs exploded on this planet. The United States detonated over half of them.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
When the first nuclear bomb was exploded in Trinity, Robert Oppenheimer, one of the founding fathers of the nuclear age, said, "We have done this before."
It could have been that Oppenheimer was speaking about weapons described in the ancient Sanskrit texts like the Mahabharata,
in which they refer to a bolt of iron charged with the light of 1,000 suns. This bolt of iron was hurled in anger and led to an explosive event which is very graphically described in this religious scripture, specifically showing all the key indications of radiation sickness and the various problems with nuclear weaponry that we've come to expect.
When we started detonating thermonuclear weapons, atomic weapons, and developing these sort of destructive technologies, the civilizations that have been watching this planet for millennia said, oh my God, these people are going way off the reservation. They are now an existential threat to themselves, but also to other planets, potentially.
All over the world, we see very conclusive evidence that ancient people were in contact with extraterrestrial life. The Japanese said that their civilization was given to them by a people they called the Dogu, who came from what they described as Anemono Torebune, which translates as bird boat universe, meaning flying boats from the universe.
The ancient Sanskrit writings of India have elaborate descriptions of vimanas, or flying craft. These texts are thousands of years old. They predate any conception that we have of spacecraft or aircraft.
But evidence is not just found in ancient texts. It is also captured in our ancestors' art, as if it was plainly obvious that ET vehicles appeared in ancient skies. It is a foregone conclusion by most broad-minded people that we are not alone in this universe. The question is, how close are they?
And we all looked up at once. It was almost like an intelligence told us, hey, look over here, we're here.
Saw 3 red lights in a triangle almost directly overhead.
I saw these things and I ran inside and got my brothers and sisters.
It actually lifted up and it could actually turn.
I'm gonna ask you to look away. I love my hands, but
I wasn't one who believed that UFOs might exist. I was satisfied they exist.
the life I have isn't what I'd seen.
They estimated 100 yards from the left wing was this 100-foot disc.
A lot of the astronauts are told to keep it quiet, and they're good Americans too. They develop the film from the moon, everything that's done by NASA.
Ma che se ne sanno ancora degli altri superiori.
There's so much evidence out there that even if less than 1% is true, that would be enough to collapse the current paradigm and change the whole planet.
This is our signature tones that we broadcast over a small walkie-talkie. They were recorded in the crop circle. What happens is the extraterrestrials, they come into the area where we vector them in with the signature tones that we broadcast. Then it enables them to home in and get a real good fix on where the site is while we're setting up.
The whole concepts of the crossing point of light, the physics of consciousness and interstellar communication, all were developed on a kind of a vision quest we did here in 95 or 96.
Astronomer J. Allen Hynek developed a scale to identify the types of human ET encounters. From his original 3 categories, a 4th, more controversial, has been added, CE4. Even more controversial, Stephen Greer added a 5th kind of encounter,